Another season is upon us. Freshmen arrive wide-eyed with dreams of future glory, while seniors prepare for their last chance at immortality. There are only a handful of these opportunities in a man's life, a handful of chances to distinguish yourself from the rest. It's on these fields where history is made, where legends begin and heroes triumph. Traditions tell the story of what you represent, of those that forge the legacy you uphold. When you come charging out of the tunnel, 100,000 people will be watching your every move. How you respond to that pressure is what defines you. These are the moments that reveal your toughness, your determination, and your pride. The Roughnecks on the Sooner Schooner. Ralphie charging out of the gate. And Chief Osceola planting his spear. The time has come. Your time is now.
You know, we spent all this time in the spring talking about all 138 programs, and Reed, we reach a pinnacle here tonight because one of these teams turns out they may have a heart of a champion, and we're going to try to decipher who we think is going to win that national title here tonight. So very excited, in particular, for this show. We also have some updates on the La Tech saga. Is it over? Is it officially over? We may have an actual schedule from the Conference USA, and it's not going to be the pinnacle of the UW Techs. It's going to be probably released at a reasonable time. We also have ESPN apparently put out their way too early top 25. I know for some of us that watch this channel, it's a dirty word, that four-letter word that I just mentioned, but we're going to sit back, we're going to hold your hand through this, and we're going to relax to this top 25 as well. But I'm not going to do it alone because, as you can see, I got my main man, my right-hand man, Reed Napper, on the show tonight. How are you doing, my guy?
You know, nothing is better than making predictions in the middle of April. Let me just say that. That's one of my favorite things because we can look back on this months later and be like, I was totally right, and I was on this since day one. What are we talking about? Also, love that our favorite soap opera is now coming to a close. What's the next one going to be?
Yeah, the next like soap opera, are we going to see some shenanigans with like our playoff system, or maybe we'll get a new logo?
Don't even get me started because that was at the top of the to-do list for the committee.
Yeah, it wasn't like figuring out what our eligibility should look like, limiting transfers. Maybe even a transfer fee. I feel like that would be pretty cool. Nope, a brand new logo that probably some consultant probably got six figures for, at least, just for the redesign. So priorities, I really appreciate our leadership's priorities right now, man. But we have a great show here tonight, is what we're trying to say, and I hope you guys are excited for it. If you are, make sure you do a couple of things for me real fast. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well. Make sure you give us a follow on Twitter as well. We got some bangers out there on Twitter, so you don't want to miss any of that. Sure. With that being said, I mean, we talked about it earlier in the intro. It's over. Like, ladies and gentlemen,
we got him. We got him. It's over.
We finally have clarification on what conference that La Tech is going to play in for the 2026 season. Imagine saying that statement and waiting until mid-April to figure that out. Because, mind you, next month we're going to figure out some kickoff times. But for now, we know that La Tech is going to be in just one conference. They're not going to be in two.
So you're telling me they aren't going to play the 20-game gauntlet and play the most games in a single season in college football history?
Yeah,
damn, I was looking forward to that.
Yeah, you know what? And that's a big thing as well. I was really looking forward to this. I mean, this was what we were going to look forward to. And you know what's crazy? It like there's a couple of days here where they are playing 2 games in one day.
Yep.
Depending on how things were shaking out, it was actually somewhat possible. Like the November 7th, that's all in the state of Alabama, right? So if you have like an 11 a.m. local kick, and then you parlay that with a 7:30 kickoff in the evening, like that's possible. Just a quick little private jet, fly over.
Yeah, just have the taxi squad play the first game or whichever game is less important in the grand scheme, and then have your better players play the other game.
Yeah, and then the like the 28th. I mean, that would have been a little bit more difficult. Maybe one of them would be a like a midnight game or something. But it was, I look at this, and as ridiculous as it looks, like like it would have been the Bishop Sycamore path, but they would have found a way to make this work if we really wanted to try it.
Yeah, I mean, again, college football's latest soap opera. As along with the handful of other things going on right now. I'm glad they finally came to an agreement. They finally got something settled. I don't think I never saw at least how much they had to pay, but it was a pretty considerable amount.
Yeah, and that's the crazy part in all of this too. Like speaking of that exit fee, so it was a lot higher than when it was initially thought. It seemed that initially it looked like that initial exit fee was going to be closer to 5 million, but because Louisiana Tech is leaving Conference USA early, they were originally expected to leave after next season. Choosing to leave a season early, they are paying more than $8 million, which is more than what UTEP paid to go join Mountain West.
What? that is actually ridiculous. But good for La Tech. Good for La Tech. I think it's going to be a step up in competition. I think, but I think in the long run, it's gonna benefit them on the field and off the field.
Yeah, because I mean, you're gonna have those regional rivalries like come back like in your preview. Like for example, I know Louisiana Monroe isn't the greatest program in the world, but I mean that's an in-state rival that you're gonna have an opportunity to play on a yearly basis because you're gonna be not just part of the same conference, you're gonna be in the same division. So having that back is gonna be really nice. You also have the Raging Cajuns like in state as well that you're going to go up against. So there's some games in here on their Sunbelt schedule that I'm really excited about for them from a pure rivalry standpoint. That's going to be really beneficial for them. It's going to generate more fan interest, which benefits that entire La Tech community, not just for football.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also, one game that sticks out to me, at least in the non-conference, at Baylor. I'm down on Baylor right now. So, Baylor could sweepwalk in that game, potentially steal one before even heading into the conference play. So that would be a huge momentum step for them going into a new conference for sure.
Yeah, and it's not just the Baylor game that seems fascinating. They also have the Army game. They have Army on October 3rd to wrap up their their primary non-conference play. I mean that could be a fascinating game as well. I mean, we talked about it over on your show. How high I am on Army. I think that's an Army football team that could potentially go to the American Conference title game.
Yeah.
And unironically enough, a rematch from a bowl game a couple of years ago when they were trying to find some 5-7 bowl teams. And little old Louisiana Tech stepped up to the plate and took on what was a ranked Army game in the Independence Bowl in Shreveport, Louisiana. So a rematch from that a couple of years ago.
Hey, how about that? Small world. Comes full circle.
That? Didn't think I was going to pull that out because originally I was just going to talk about how I was going to miss the monstrosity of the schedule. Like this right here. I'm going to truly miss this. When this gets updated on footballschedules.com, it's going to be a truly sad day.
Absolute cinema. Yeah. That's the only way to describe it.
Yeah. And you know what? That's perfectly okay because we always have the screenshot.
Yes.
Of what could have been, but I mean it is a lot. But shout out to the Conference USA. Them dragging it out, it did end up being worthwhile. Because it seemed like they're made Louisiana Tech pay even more than what they were originally going to expect. and that money can be used to either maybe attract a new conference member down the line. University of Texas Rio Grande, I know, is going to get some attention. They're making some upgrades to their stadium. So that could be like a team getting some attention. Tarleton State, maybe use some of that money to, get some of those quality FCS options. Maybe even try to sprinkle in a South Dakota State. Who knows? Like they don't want to stay at 10 members. That's certainly like an option that they're probably looking at right now.
Yeah,
but I do think that's going to help them out tremendously.
Yeah, nothing is surprising in the world of college football anymore. So if South Dakota State were to join, that wouldn't be surprising anymore, because we're getting Sacramento State joining the MAC, so anything is possible at this point.
Yeah, as Kevin Garnett would say, anything is certainly possible. So
yes.
And what's going to help us out, I think, as a college football community, is we should see an actual schedule from the CUSA, because yes, they did have that schedule release as well, but because Louisiana Tech was on the schedule for most of these CUSA teams, that was, sort of a placeholder. So now for most of the teams in this conference, aside from a Sam Houston and a New Mexico State, that one was going to be finalized regardless. That we're going to see the CUSA teams are finally going to know who they're going to play. And it took a lot longer than maybe it should have, but I'm happy for them being able to figure out what they want to do in terms of travel plans outside of the month of September.
Yeah, and just a thought I had, with Louisiana Tech leaving the CUSA, does there start to become a clear top of the conference and bottom half of the conference? Like, for example, Kennesaw State, reigning conference champion, do we see them and a few other teams start to really, peak at the top of the conference for this next season and the years to come, and there's just a complete bottom out of other teams? Or, is there an even fluctuation? That's something that I think is pretty fascinating, honestly.
Yeah, because I'm looking at some of my power rankings for the Conference USA, and I think you can certainly make an argument that there is a pretty clear cut, top 3 or 4, depending on how you feel about maybe even 5, depending on how you feel about Delaware, in terms of, can they continue to improve at the line of scrimmage, because that line of scrimmage did bite them in the butt a little bit in that second half of the season when they got into conference play, albeit still an exciting team to watch in spite of that. But what's really fascinating is that for La Tech, if La Tech was still in this conference, we could have been talking about La Tech being, in that top 3 or 4 and having a legitimate shot of winning the Conference USA, where now they're in the Sun Belt and there's still a good program, a solid G5 program, but it's more of a, middle of a road team in the Sun Belt. So there certainly is that step up in competition, like you mentioned, to where La Tech is not going to have that same roster advantage that they had over the majority of the conference.
Yeah,
that maybe they enjoyed last year, for example.
Yeah, exactly. That was the point I was going to make. La Tech, in my updated Sun Belt standings, they're right in the middle of the pack. They're a 5-7 team right now. So I think that at least in the immediate, it may not benefit them, but I think having that step up in competition is going to be able to lure better talent to that program in the near future. So I think again, all around, it's a good move. And I'm glad that they were finally able to come to an agreement for an outrageous amount of money that shouldn't even be possible nowadays in college football. But what do I know?
Yeah, what do we know? And to be fair, I'm a touch higher than what you are. I'm having around a 6-6 myself. So
yeah.
I have them as a bowl caliber team. But it's not even that La Tech is a mediocre football team by any means. I think they're going to be at least an above average to a good team. The thing about them, now that we know that they're going to be in the Sun Belt, is that I'm looking at La Tech, and I genuinely believe La Tech has the strongest strength of schedule in this conference going into this year. Partially because of their non-conference schedule, but even with some of the games that they have in conference play for Louisiana Tech. And I figured this would be a good time to, if I had that monstrosity of a schedule, I'm not trying to squint, but you got Louisiana, Old Dominion is a good program. Arkansas State, starting to find its footing. Georgia Southern's got a good team too. You know, even without JC French, I mean, there's going to be some difficult games. You know, there's not a lot of games on their Sun Belt slate where you're looking out outside of maybe ULM and Southern Miss, and you're saying, oh, those are going to be guaranteed wins. I mean, they're going to need to bring their like their A game or at least a B plus performance week in and week out.
Yeah, for sure. You know, Delaware or my schedule hasn't updated, so I apologize. I was about to misspeak. So yeah, I totally agree. It's they're gonna have to bring their A game, especially with the non-conference schedule that they do have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't even mention Troy. They go on the road to play Troy later on in the in the season. That's more of a like an early November, late October game. And Troy, I mean, I'm very high on that Troy football team. Chance for them to go back to the Sun Belt title game and could win this Western Division. Playing them on the road is not going to be an easy task either. So, we have some clarity at least. We know you're going to be in the Sun Belt. It only took $8 million to do it, but you did it though.
Yeah, we finally have the window in front of us. It's just, are we able to see through it?
Yeah,
that is the question.
That will be the like the $1 million question. But we have a little bit more clarity versus what was bestowed upon me earlier this week as Reed, because ESPN and I know for some of you that are watching tonight, some of you that are more G6ers, ESPN is a little bit of a dirty word, so I'm going to hold your hand through it. Reed is going to sing some of us a lullaby, so like to get through this next part.
I got you.
But they did release a way too early top 25. And I do want to shout out College Football Zone real fast because they did a really good job of like really creating this graphic real quick to make it real nice and pretty. So shout out to College Football Zone first and foremost. But this is what their top 25 looks like. And we talked about it a little bit, Reed, before we got on air tonight.
Yeah.
And I look at this top 25, and there's certainly a few fascinating things on this list. I'm sure you had some thoughts on as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna work back to front here. So Tennessee at 25. I have Tennessee ranked number 12 right now in the country. And I think a lot of that has to do with their return production. Yeah, you can look at me. It's not me, it's the computer. You can blame the computer. I think a lot of their return production has to do with that mainly. I mean, quarterback's the biggest question mark surrounding that team right now. So I get it from ESPN's perspective because of that. TCU isn't even in my top 30 teams. So that is a bit surprising to me. Louisville and SMU tied at 21. So basically between the two of them, who's going to play Miami in the ACC championship game, viewing from ESPN's perspective. And before I let you say your piece, Iowa at 19, they're probably about to have the worst quarterback they've had in the last 4 seasons. So, and shout out to Cade McNamara, but Iowa at 19 is kind of blasphemy, but I mean, they're the model of consistency, always 8-4 or better. So yeah.
Or in the case in the last couple of years, 9-4, because you have to account for the bowl win against a ranked opponent, towards the end of the year. We see Iowa in those types of games. And to be honest with you, I actually am okay with Iowa's ranking at 19. We know the defense is going to be there. We know that they're going to have a good offensive line, and they're going to have a really good run game to go with that. So really good complementary football experience, head coach as well. $1 million question is, like, what's that quarterback position look like? But as long as that quarterback, and this has always been the thing with Iowa, as long as that quarterback has a pulse, they're going to be fine. They're so good foundationally and play so well fundamentally that me and you could play quarterback for the Iowa Hawkeyes, and they would at least still be a bowl team. And that's how highly I think of them. Like, just from a operational standpoint, I do want to touch up on what you said about Tennessee. I don't have as much faith in Tennessee as you do, man. I think they should be higher than 25. I have them in that 21 range, but top 15, no, borderline top 10, brother.
Top 10 returning snaps from last season.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you want to talk about like inexperience at the quarterback position at Iowa. I mean, we just feeling like that good about I know if they have the 5-star quarterback Braden Faison, like you Are we a phase on true for Reed? Is that not what we're?
I am a phase on Brandon Truther. I think just solely because of his talent as a 5-star prospect, I think he should be the starter, in my opinion. But if they go in the direction of a George McIntyre, he's been in that system for over 2 years now. He knows the Heupel system through and through, at least you would think. So even if they go in the direction of George McIntyre, I think Tennessee will be fine.
Yeah,
I think they'll be good.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that Faison Brandon can get a opportunity to shine because as long as they blow out like Furman and Kennesaw State, we're going to find out early if he's ready to play or not. Because I'm sure at the bare minimum he'll get some mop up duty. Really for Tennessee, the 2 games that I'm eyeing at early, that's going to tell me a lot about this Tennessee football game. That road game that they have against Georgia Tech, where they go to Bobby Dobb to play a solid Georgia Tech football team, albeit without their starting quarterback. It looks like they're going to be rolling with Alberto Mendoza, not to be confused, obviously, with future number 1 overall pick Fernando Mendoza. And then that home game against Texas as well, I think is going to tell me quite a bit as well, too, in terms of where they at. I think they're capable of going undefeated, but they definitely need to prove some things at the quarterback position. And operationally, I'm not as high as them outside that quarterback position as I am on Iowa, which is why I'm higher on Iowa than Tennessee right now. But it's not really that much. I do think they should be higher than 25, though.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to make a huge fuss about it. That Georgia Tech game is going to be great to watch in week 2. I mean, that's just the fact that Tennessee has to go to Bobby Dodd. Like, I don't even know the last time those 2 teams have played at either home team stadium. So that's going to be a huge game to watch. And then obviously Texas, whenever the Longhorns are in town, that's must watch TV in Knoxville. So I currently have that as a Tennessee loss. I currently project them to go 9-3. I think that bye week later in the season in week 9 could cause some trouble because they go into a Final Four stretch of Kentucky, A&M, LSU, and Vanderbilt. That A&M and LSU back-to-back is going to be tough at the back end of their schedule. So I get it from ESPN's perspective. Complete quarterback turnover, a tough back half of the schedule, and some definitely toss-up games right at the start of the schedule there with Georgia Tech and Texas.
Yeah, but what I will say though, while we are looking at that bottom line for a split second, can we talk about TCU at 23 perspective for a second? What I need to have a conversation with somebody at ESPN in terms of what they're seeing from TCU. I think they're going to be good, but I think they have too many question marks to be a top 25 team. Like we just lost. Literally watched them lose Josh Hoover, who I know he was a little bit turnover prone, but he was still one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12 last year. That's not nothing.
They're buying in Jaden Craig, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, 24 career starts, 52-14 TD to interception ratio, new OC. I mean, there's extended Sonny Dykes. I mean, there's a lot of overturn going on at TCU right now. So I am not sure what ESPN sees, but then again, that's probably why we don't work for ESPN. So
yeah, how dare we have some questions about ESPN's process,
right?
Yeah, I found that really fascinating because I saw that and it piqued my interest a little bit just in terms of what they're seeing because I barely had TCU in my top 35. Like not talking about top 25, just like the first 5 out. Like they're not even in my top 30. I definitely would have Houston ahead of TCU right now, as well as the likes of like a SMU. They should have more of a gap than just one spot personally. But that one definitely caught my attention as well for like TCU at 23. Yeah. I also think USC should be higher too. I think 20 is a little bit insulting. They put together some good classes in the last couple of years. Plus, Jaden Maiava's coming back, one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten. Lincoln Riley, he could spell offense like it's the back of his hand with the defense leveling up as well. I actually think USC should be closer to a top 10 team than outside the top 20. I have them at 13.
That was going to be the next point I made was USC. I'm also higher on them. I have them at 14. So I think the recruiting point that you made is very key here. again, I think USC is going to take a step up from where they were last year. They're going to be very competitive in the Big Ten. I'm not saying they're a playoff team right now. Hint, hint, wink, wink. But I think USC next year is when we really have to look out for them, because that that recruiting class is going to stand out. They're going to have a year of experience under them. If they can get key portal acquisitions when they need them, hypothetically, if Maeva were to stay another year, then really watch out for USC next year. But I do think they're a top 15 team right now. I think that's a little low for them.
Yeah, and that's a like an interesting point as well. Is just seeing. I do think USC is going to have a tough run at it. Like I think it's possible that they're going to finish 8-4, like similar to what they did last year. But it's not because I think they're a mediocre or good team at all. I mean, they do play some tough games. Like they do play Oregon at home. They have Penn State on the road. Cross-country road trips typically have not bowled well for the team that has to fly all the way to cross the country for a game. Who would have thought that when we had the new conference realignment? Couldn't be me. Ohio State at home as well. Indiana on the road. UCLA actually looks like to have a pulse this year too. So I see them at 8-4 baseline. They could win every game. I think the talent is there for them to win every single game, and I'm not worried about them missing a bowl game at all. But I mean, they got some tough games to where at the end of the season, I could see them around 20-21. But to begin the year out, I mean, I think they really should be closer to a top 10 team.
Yeah, the biggest question, what's their record when they head into their bye week? Because, I mean, they could realistically be a 6-1 team, hypothetically. I mean, Oregon's the only loss I have right now. So, yeah, it's gonna be interesting for USC, but I think they should be higher than 20 for sure.
Yeah, and that's not the only team, but I obviously feel that way about them being a little bit higher. I think Alabama is getting a little bit disrespected as well. This is a team that's just making the the college football playoff last year. So really good roster, probably a top 5 roster just from a pure talent perspective. Really respect Kalen DeBoer. I think Kalen DeBoer is somehow underrated, I would even go and say, because he gets knocked for basically not being Nick Saban. But who's going to be Nick Saban, especially in this era of college football, right? And then not only that, I know the quarterback is going to be a little bit of a question mark, but I mean, we saw a couple of those quarterbacks go to work. Keelan Russell, saw him in the spring game. I mean, that dude can play, and that Alabama's defense it's not a slouch either. Now they got to figure out how to get a run game, because they're too good to not have a run game, and it can't all be on Keelan Russell.
Yep.
But I think Alabama. Same thing about I said about USC. I think they should be a borderline top 10 team as well.
Alabama will not be successful this year if they cannot have a run game. They cannot be a bottom 15 team again in rushing. It also doesn't help that Noah Rogers, the receiver they just brought in from NC State, got hurt. So his status for the start of the season is unknown at this point. But I think he'll be good to go at least by SEC play. I'm a little lower on Bama actually than even what ESPN has. I have them at 20 right now. Now I'm not saying that they obviously can't reach a ceiling of a top 10 team and make the playoff again. I'm not doubting that at all. I just can't overlook how inefficient their run game is. Like even in the spring against their own defense, they can't run the ball, and that's really concerning to me. That is something I rate pretty highly, like in my view of teams, is their ability to run the ball, and they can't even do it against their own defense. So what's it going to mean when they have to play South Carolina and Georgia and Tennessee and A&M and LSU and Auburn at the end of the season? Like how are they going to fare when they play even better, or at least defenses on the same caliber? That's a huge question mark for me.
Yeah, but I mean, I could also look at it like on the opposite direction and think to myself, what if this defense is really good? Because I know that they had some issues in terms of being gashed, like in the running game last year. I know even like Vanderbilt had some big runs against Alabama last year, albeit they were able to find a way to win. And then at the same time, I mean, they still have some good weapons on the like the outside. Like Ryan Williams, still has a lot of talent. He had a down year last year. but he was still like his freshman year, like he was a really strong wide receiver. And then not to mention, they're still big on the offensive line. They're gonna have a strength advantage on the offensive line.
For sure.
Maybe last year was a little bit of a coaching issue, and I'm sure that Kalen DeBoer is smart enough to understand that, hey, we need to fix that, and I have enough confidence in him to believe that it will be fixed. And in spite of those issues of not being able to run the ball, they still managed to find a way to make it into the playoff and win a playoff game on the road. Albeit they did end in getting absolutely slaughtered by Indiana, but who didn't get slaughtered by Indiana last year? That was almost nobody was actually competing with them.
Never in the year of our Lord 2026 would I say that Alabama is coming off a season where they lost in the Rose Bowl by 30 to Indiana.
Yeah.
What a world.
I never thought that would come out of my mouth, unless we were talking about an EA college football dynasty. But
yes,
that's where we are in this sport. Honestly, it's interesting. It's definitely a really interesting time. So that was something that definitely stuck out to me as well. On the flip side, I think Ole Miss at 9 is a little bit aggressive. I do think I love Trinidad Chambliss. I love that Keelan Lacey is coming back.
Yeah,
they lost a lot of star power on that defensive side of the ball, like Prince Hugh, for example. Like that's going to be a massive loss on that defensive line.
Yeah,
and I also wonder, while I think Ole Miss is good enough to make it back to the college football playoff again, I wonder if what we saw from Pete Golding was that a Linsanity moment that we witnessed, like with the rally around the flag effect, or is that something that we should expect moving forward? So I'm just curious to see what a Pete Golding football team looks like in the long term now that he has technically a full off season under his belt to establish his program or how he wants to run things in Oxford.
Jake, we might have like a neural link together. I'm not gonna lie. Like do we have the same conscience? Are we like distant relatives? Like,
no, I think I have the magic conch, and I've just been going off the magic conch.
Dude, I've said this for months about Ole Miss now. Now, for this ESPN ranking specifically, I'm curious where they would have Ole Miss if they didn't have Trinidad. But because they have Trinidad, they obviously put them at 9. I'm a little lower on Ole Miss. I have them at 12. Now, I think, obviously, Trinidad and Kwan Lacey in the backfield is one of the best quarterback running back duo coming back in the country next season. So I'm not disregarding that at all. You took the words right out of my mouth. I don't know if I can put full trust into Pete Golding right now. I'm kind of in a holding pattern right now, solely because of exactly what you said. Was it a fluke? Was it just pure luck, for lack of better words, that he had that much success as he did in the playoff on no head coaching experience? Did he also just have the full momentum of his team backing him because of Lane Kiffin up and leaving out of nowhere right before the playoff in the greatest regular season that they had in the school's history? I'm not sure, but as a full-time head coach, I'm not sure if I can put full stock into that. So I'm kind of in a wait and see on Ole Miss, but as of right now, I'm a little lower on them. I have them at 12 in comparison to 9.
Yeah, and I had him at number 14 myself. And I'm willing to give Golding a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here, even though he's essentially operating as a brand new head coach, right? Because he did find a way to beat Georgia in the college football playoff last year, and finding a way to beat Kirby Smart. That takes an A+ record, because we've seen some really talented quarterbacks go up against Georgia. I remember like CJ Stroud, for example. Going up against Georgia a few years ago, and he had Ryan Day, and Ryan Day, very good head coach to an elite head coach in his own right, couldn't find a way to beat Georgia. So I mean, them being able to find a way to beat Kirby Smart on a neutral site field, I mean that's not nothing either, and I do want to acknowledge that. So a little bit more benefit of the doubt compared to what I would normally give a first-time head coach, but I just need to make sure that it's not a Linsanity run that we saw right before our eyes.
I agree. Another team I just wanted to point out real quick, Indiana, I think is a little high. I have them at 9 personally, but I'm not disregarding what Indiana is going to be next season. I think they're going to be right back near the mountaintop personally, just based on the roster that they have. And I can't doubt Kurt Signetti, but I currently project them a little lower than 6. I have them at 9 personally. I don't know about you, Jake.
So I was actually in the opposite direction. I actually thought Indiana should be a little bit higher. I had Indiana at number 4 because I think the scary part in all of this, I think from a pure talent perspective, I actually think there's more pure talent on this roster than what we saw last year and definitely what we saw in year 1 under Kirk Cinetti. Indiana is not going anywhere, guys. It's they're going to be a problem for a time being as long as Kirk Cinetti is going to be around. I mean, he found a way to turn a historical poverty program in Indiana. And in his 2 years, he has 2 playoff appearances and he has a national championship ring. That's more impressive than what I've ever seen any coach do in his first 2 years out of school. Even what Nick Saban did in his first 2 years at Alabama.
Can you tell how speechless I am? Because again, at Indiana, bro,
Indiana, bro.
What a world we live in. And also shout out to that TikTok I sent in our group chat about if you were a Michigan fan, would you trade Signetti for Dusty May? Never in a million years. Or if you're an Indiana fan, would you trade Signetti for Dusty May in basketball? Never in a million years am I giving up the greatest football coach we've had in our program's history and the first national championship in our school's history for Dusty May. Like, what? I don't even know.
And Dusty May, he won a national championship, and he found a way to take Florida Atlantic to the Final Four a couple of years ago. So no disrespect at all to Dusty May.
No, none at all.
We're a college football show, but I mean, to the point of the TikTok that you sent in specifically, I mean, at least for Michigan, Michigan basketball, there was a time where they were good before Dusty May arrived.
Yes.
On the other hand, Indiana football, I mean, there would be a year every once in a while, once every decade, where they would have a good to a very good season. They were celebrating Lou Holtz as a top 5 football coach ever at that university. And Lou Holtz, the best that he did was that he took them to some random bowl game in the 1970s or whatever he coached there, right? That's what we're talking about here. Just in terms of in the Indiana football, right? Other thoughts that I had, because I'm cool with the top 5 to be honest with you. I mean, not really any big changes. And this is more of a ranking philosophy for me. I always like to have at least one G6 in the top 25. So I would have Boise State in my top 25 because I think they're the best G6 team in the country right now. And I also would venture. I know this might get some eye rolls because they're usually used as a team to prop up the rest of the conference. I actually do think Missouri actually should be ranked here. I really like Austin Simmons. I really like Eli Drinkwitz. Ahmad Hardy is the best running back in the SEC as well. Austin Simmons is not bad. What happened to Austin Simmons was purely bad injury luck because he was going to play. He was not playing bad when he got hurt. It's just that Trinidad Chambliss was playing just as good. And so why would you fuck up a good thing and change him out for a rustier Austin Simmons? So, I mean, Austin Simmons is good. He's going to surprise some people for sure. I actually thought South Carolina and Florida should also get some consideration. I think both of those teams have a lot of talent. And going back to my personal philosophy when it comes to my top 25, in the preseason, it's going to look very similar to what my personal model has, because for me, it's who are the top 25 best teams in the country at the end of the day. So I think South Carolina has a lot of talent with Norris Settlers and Dylan Stewart. And then Florida really fascinates me, seeming like they might have an adult in the room, or at least someone that maybe is a little bit better of a head coach than a Billy Napier, albeit having less resources than what Billy Napier had to work with at Florida.
Yeah, just to touch on the few teams you said there, Florida, I would have it 16. South Carolina, I would have it 19. Missouri, 21. Arizona sneaks in my top 25, 23. Auburn, surprisingly, at 24. Yeah, I know. The model loves Byron Brown, and so do I. So
yeah, I mean, I really messed with Byron Brown as well. And Auburn was a team that was getting consideration. They were in my top 30. And then Arizona, I would personally have in my top 25 as well, if
Yeah.
it wasn't for my personal rule of having a G6. So
For sure.
if I didn't care about conference at all, or not caring about having a G6 in there, like Arizona would be in there instead of a Boise State.
Yeah.
And I think Arizona under Noah Fafita, I mean, that's going to be an exciting team to watch too. So you could really sit back. I mean, there's only 25 teams that you could put in the top 25, but you really like sit down and think about it. Like even like a TCU, like I think there's a world where you could put like TCU in a top 25. I just think there's some other teams out there that are just more deserving, I think, at this time.
Yeah. You could realistically, I mean, if you really wanted to have fun with it, you could just make like a top 40 and, really put a lot of teams like on that bubble of in the top 25. I'm not saying to actually implement that in the real world college football. I'm just saying if you wanted to have a good old fun time ranking teams, just like make your normal top 25 and then put a few teams on the bubble. That's all I'm saying.
Or you could be like me and piss off multiple fan bases at the same time by releasing the full like 138. I mean, that's something that I am planning to do once we get done with like going through like spring predictions like for here on Twitter as well as on the YouTube page as well. Like that is coming. And I will be pissing off multiple fan bases. So it's
hey, well, thank you for finally acknowledging Tulsa. By the way, I'm proud of you for overcoming that.
You know what? I really appreciate that. It took a lot of work. I wasn't sure if I was able to pronounce Tulsa, but we got the dictionary out. We got the hooked on phonics, and we did it.
Hey, yeah, that works. Golden Hurricanes, great mascot.
Yeah, very good team name as well. But before we like get ready to get into really the meat and potatoes of the show tonight.
Oh yeah.
Is there anything else that you have to say about this ESPN way too early top 25?
No, it's ESPN, so I take it with a grain of salt anyway. Let's go. Let's go next.
All right, there we go. Yep. That's what we're talking about, baby. That's the kind of attitude that I like here on College Football Red Zone. So before we get ready to unveil this final graphic here, man, need you guys do a couple of things here for me real fast. First of all, really appreciate you enjoying the show. If you can hit the like button and hit that subscribe button real fast, because it takes a lot of work to, not only prepare for the show, but make the pretty graphics and, like I got to get people organized, like getting in that I would truly appreciate that. And then make sure to go check his stuff out as well. Love for the Game Pod here on YouTube as well as on Twitter as well. That would truly help a brother out. So I truly appreciate it.
I appreciate that.
Of course, man. I got you. Got you, my guy. All right. So here we go. So with that being said, a couple of interesting caveats as we get into college football playoff is that we actually have some changes that I'm sure some of us may have forgotten about, but unfortunately, I did not. So what are those changes? So last year, we had top 5 conference champions. It's not automatically, so you could be a power conference champ in the first 2 years of his 12-team playoff. There was a world where you could miss. Duke, I'm looking at you. That's not the case anymore. If you're a power conference champion, no matter where you're at, what your record is, you're going to be in. So it's a super auto bid for the power conferences. And then you have one auto bid for the entire G6. And then on top of all of that, we have Notre Dame. We have that Notre Dame quirk where they're ranked in the top 12. That's basically an auto bid for them too.
Mm-hmm.
Like they automatically get one of the like the at-large spots, which that one rubs me the wrong way. Oh, and then the last thing about the G6, it's not, you don't necessarily have to be a conference champion. It's the highest ranked G6 team.
Yeah.
So you could lose your conference championship or not even make your conference championship, but if you're the highest ranked team in the G6, you get the auto bid.
Yes.
So I know we have a lot of thoughts about that. The Notre Dame rule in particularly rubs us the wrong way. That's well documented here on the channel. So if you want to comb through the live show history to get those thoughts, I'll let you guys do that.
But do that after the show. Do that after the show.
After the show, obviously. You're right. Good point, Reed. But with that being said, we got the board out, in terms of we need to figure out who's going to be in this top 12. And then even better, who's going to be our national champion, calling it here in the year of our Lord, 2026, on this April 16th night. So
you have to remember the date for a second.
Have to. Well, I had to look at my computer screen for a second. If it didn't have the date, that's I'm pushing 30, man. So it's my mental is starting to slow down just a little bit. I'm turning into an unk in real time reads. That's why I have young people like you to help a brother out. I appreciate that. So, but with that being said, we'll get things started here with the ACC. And listen, my man, you are you are always like a guest here on the channel. I imagine we're probably going to have the same thing for the ACC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I first appreciate you letting me go first. I think we are going to be aligned here, and I think they're finally going to get over the hump. I think they're finally going to get it done. It's the Miami Hurricanes. That roster, top to bottom, is just too stacked, plain and simple. I think they upgraded a quarterback. They got a serious, legit 1B receiver in Cooper Barkate to go on the other side of Malachi Toney. I mean, that defense is going to be back. It always has been under Mario Cristobal. I expect the O-line to be back at the similar feet that they were last season, even with the replacement of a lot of the talent on that front line. But I think Miami finally gets over the hump in 2026, and they finally win their first ACC championship, which is crazy to think they never even have played in the game.
Yeah. Yeah,
wow.
With the amount of NFL players that's gone through that program over the years since they joined the ACC, and the fact that literally last year, this Miami team was a drive away from possibly winning the national championship. Of course, had that untimely Carson Beck interception on the last meaningful drive of the game, but we saw them play for a national title and nearly won the national championship last year before they won the ACC. But I'm with you. I think that this team is head and shoulders better than everyone else in the ACC. And as long as they can fight off the complacency, that's really the biggest question. Can they fight off the complacency and be focused over a course of a full 12-week season?
Yep.
We're talking about Miami as the ACC champion. That being said, I don't really see any other teams from the ACC making it into the college football playoff at this time. I think there's a couple teams that could get consideration, like maybe – like a Louisville could get some consideration. I have Louisville playing in the ACC title game personally, but I don't think that the resume would be good enough, even though I would have them as a 10-3 football team at that point with the ACC championship loss to get one of those at-large bids compared to some of the other teams that I have ultimately making the playoff.
Yeah, I think SMU could also be in that conversation. I think SMU is going to be really competitive in the ACC. I think I do have SMU playing in the championship game against Miami. But I think, again, like we prefaced, Miami is just way too stacked both sides of the ball. I think they have to get it done this year. And if they don't, that is a failure. Yeah,
that's absolutely a failure if they don't win the ACC, or if they definitely don't make the college football playoff. That's a disappointment of a year, especially after what you went through to get Darian Mensah at the 11th hour. So you're going to have that target on your back.
For sure.
But speaking of targets on your back, moving on over to the Big Ten. So for me in the Big Ten, I do have 3 teams from this conference making it to the college football playoff. One that's going to surprisingly have the biggest target on its back, and that is going to be Indiana. So Indiana, your defending national champ, I do think is going to end up coming back here. And I think they're going to win not necessarily win the Big Ten, but I think they'll be back in the Big Ten championship and get that opportunity to play for the Big Ten title. I don't think they'll win it this year, but I do think they will do enough to make it to the Big Ten championship and get possibly a top 4 seed in the college football playoff. Another team that I do have as well is the Ohio State Buckeyes. I actually think this team in particular is actually going to, no kidding, be the team that wins the Big Ten. Not only do I think it's the most talented team in this conference, I think this is the most talented team in the country. Not necessarily thinking that that's going to automatically lead them to winning a national championship. But I do think Ohio State is going to at least win the Big Ten this year. But then what about team number 3? And I think team number 3 is going to come with a very little surprise here. I have the Oregon Ducks. I don't think that they'll make it into the Big Ten title game, but I think they're going to have a very good record like they did last year. I think they finished 11-1, and because of tiebreakers, miss out on the Big Ten championship. And so they'll get in, possibly getting a home game as well, the way that I'm looking at things.
Ditto to all 3. I have the exact same 3 from the Big Ten in, but I do not to pile on for those 3 teams. I'm going to talk about some teams that potentially could be on the bubble of maybe being competitive and maybe potentially an outside chance at the conference title. Just pulling it up here real quick. So I think Penn State is going to be in that conversation. I think Washington is going to be in that conversation. And I have an outside shot at Iowa being in this conversation. I currently have Iowa as a 9-3 projected record. But again, we've talked about on the show before, all 4 of their losses last season were by 1 score. If they could flip a few of those around, be a 10-plus win team, I think they're in the conversation for an at-large spot from the Big Ten. So Washington, Penn State, and Iowa, I think are going to be on that bubble of not being in the conference title, but I think at least being in the at-large conversation.
Yeah, and I certainly agree with you on Penn State, like certainly being in that bubble conversation as well. That was a team that I was heavily considering like putting into my college football playoff personally. I just don't think that their strength of schedule is going to give them as the benefit of the doubt that they need compared to some other 10-2 teams that I did decide to put into my my college football playoff. But Penn State was very close to getting in. And then Michigan was actually a team that I was also considering as well. I think just the fact that they have an actual adulted head coach versus what they had in Sharon Moore the last couple of years, I think that's going to really show on the field right away. Maybe not leading into a college football appearance, but being very close, being able to pull off some big wins, maybe pull off a big win against Oklahoma, keep it competitive against Ohio State, maybe even beat Indiana. I think that's certainly, I think that's an upset that can happen. I think Michigan can pull that one off, to be honest with you. But there's going to be a couple of brew losses that they take in the month of November that's going to ultimately stop them from getting in. But Michigan was a team that I was considering for my college football playoff picture as well.
Yeah, I completely overlooked them. Don't know how I did that. I guess it's the Penn State fan to me. Yeah, Michigan will also be in this conversation for sure. I think Kyle Whittingham, proven winner at Utah. I think having that experience, bringing that over in the Big Ten with Michigan is gonna prove from the jump for sure.
Yeah. Now on the opposite side of that spectrum, I do think that the Big 12 is going to be a one big league once again, and I'm not going to talk too much about Texas Tech because I know that we just had the the Texas Tech, not Texas Tech, but the Big 12 preview on the channel last week with Colton driving through the Appalachians to deliver his analysis on the Big 12. But it's not just that. I think it's head and shoulders above the league, because there is a couple of teams in this conference for the Big 12 that could potentially challenge them. The problem is that in the regular season, they avoid those teams. They avoid Utah. They avoid BYU. The toughest game that they have is probably going to be Arizona, and they have Arizona at home as well. So, I mentioned it on Twitter a couple of days ago, where I don't think that winning the Big 12 is a goal. I think that should be an expectation, and really the biggest challenge for Texas Tech, similar to a Miami that we just talked about earlier tonight, is can they keep focus and avoid being complacent? Because for me, I don't think that 12-0 even should be a goal. I think 12-0 should be an expectation with how the strength of schedule is for Texas Tech. And for the record, I think the Red Raiders are going to be one of 2 undefeated teams in college football, at least in the P4.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I think Texas Tech, if they don't win the Big 12, once again, that's a failure. That's a failure without a doubt. 115th ranked strength of schedule per my model, which is crazy because they play in a major power conference. They are not Notre Dame, who can schedule basically whoever they want. Yeah, without a doubt, They have to win their conference. If they don't, it's a failure. But also shout out Joey McGuire, maybe potential fan of the program. We'll see. But
Potential fan of you for sure.
Yeah. But I think without doubt, I think Texas Tech's roster is stacked again, top to bottom. And they're going undefeated this year.
Yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Like if they don't go undefeated and they don't win the Big 12 title either, like even like an 11-win Big 12 team in Texas Tech, they lose in the Big 12 championship. I don't think that 11-2 Texas Tech gets in because I genuinely believe they have the worst schedule in the Power Four from a strength of schedule perspective.
Yes, without a doubt.
Literally no excuses.
Like just pulling up their schedule, they don't play Houston, they don't play BYU. Like the toughest conference teams they play per my rankings are Arizona and TCU.
Yeah.
And then it's pretty much a cakewalk. And their out of conference they do play Houston, but their out of conference is a joke. Abilene Christian, Oregon State, and Sam Houston. No disrespect to those programs, but Texas Tech should walk all over them.
They should. They absolutely should. But we'll just have to wait and see. But I mean, for now, I do think that it's going to be a one big league.
Yes.
I will say this though. I do think that we're going to run into a situation like we did last year, where there was an 11-1 team that made it to the title game and ended up losing in that title game and got left out. We saw this happen with BYU last year. I do think we see a similar case happen this time around, albeit not with BYU. I think Kansas State's path is a pretty clear-cut path. I think it's a good team, maybe not a top 25 caliber team yet, but a good team that just happens to have a great schedule draw. And I think 11-1 is certainly possible for Kansas State. And actually, that's what I do have them at. But I do think they're going to have that same situation that happened to BYU last year, and they get left out, even though they did win 11 games in the regular season as a power conference team.
Yeah, I agree. Kansas State is definitely going to take a huge step forward with Colin Klein, first-year head coach. I have them at 10-2, but obviously 11-1 is very doable. So I think Kansas State is going to be left out just solely because of that strength of schedule that they do have in the Big 12, I think.
Yeah. So, which leads us to the opposite end of that spectrum, the SEC. Now, before I get into like the teams that I'm going to reveal for the SEC, I will say this, and I'm going to hold like everyone's hand for this one because I know all the non-SEC fans are not going to like what I'm about to say. So we saw the SEC got the benefit of the doubt last year in the college football playoff when it comes to those seedings. And that was back when they had 8 conference games. And that was even with Vanderbilt being left out. I think Vanderbilt had a compelling case to get in as well as a 10-2 football team. That was one of those teams that had a good enough resume to get in. That 9th conference game is going to give the SEC even more benefit of the doubt. I don't love that it's going to work out that way, but that's just what the numbers tell me. Out of the top 23 strength of schedules, 16 of them are in the SEC. Even Vanderbilt, who's going to have the weakest schedule in this conference, they're sitting at number 23, at least how things stack in the springtime.
Yeah.
So I just want to prepare people. If you see 4 or 5 teams make it to the SEC from the SEC, make this college football playoff, it's not because of like it's an SEC invitational. It's because legitimately that 9th conference game is going to really beef up strength of schedule, and we've seen the college football playoff committee really take strength of schedule into consideration. So, with that in mind, I ended up having 5 teams from the SEC make the college football playoff.
Mm-hmm.
So here's how I have it work out. So I have Texas winning the SEC with Alabama making it to the SEC title game. They end up losing, but they're going to get in because they made it to Atlanta. And then the other 3 teams that I have from the SEC that get in is Ole Miss. Ole Miss is going to have that win over Georgia, so they'll be the 3rd highest seeded team from the SEC. Georgia is going to get in as well. And then I have LSU getting in as one of the last at-large team as well. I actually have LSU, a little bit of a spoiler here. I have LSU as my 11 seed.
Okay.
But that's going to be my 5 teams from the SEC that make it into this college football playoff.
All right, so say your 5 one more time. Texas,
so,
Georgia, Bama.
All right, so we got Texas.
Yeah.
Texas is going to be my my conference champion.
Yep.
And they're going to get one of the the at-large buys, top 4 buys, I should say.
They beat Bama in the championship.
Yep, they beat Alabama in the SEC title game. Alabama will still get in because they're going to get benefited out to a team that makes it to the SEC championship game. Ditto to the Big Ten title game as well.
Yep.
So Alabama is going to be in. I think Ole Miss gets in as an at-large. Georgia gets in as an at-large.
Mm-hmm.
And then LSU will get the final at-large.
Okay.
They're my number 11 seeded team.
Okay. I'm gonna vary a little bit. I also have Texas winning the SEC.
Okay.
I have them playing Georgia in the championship. So Georgia by proxy will get in because they lost the championship game. I have A&M as an at-large. I have LSU as an at-large. They would also be my 11 seed, fun fact. And now I have a
really attached to the hip here, aren't we?
Yeah, we really are. Great minds think alike in our case. And I have a quirk here because Oklahoma and Tennessee actually both finished 9-3 in my rankings, but I think I'm going to lean Oklahoma here. I think they have enough returning production. I'm believing in Mateer. Again, if he can stay healthy, I think he has enough to get him over the hump. So I'm going to put Oklahoma as my 5th SC team. So I have Texas beating Georgia in the SC championship. Loser Georgia still making it as an at-large. A&M, LSU, and Oklahoma.
All right. So that I will be working on updating all of that.
You got it.
Because 5 teams, I did write it down because, like I mentioned earlier tonight, my memory does not serve me like it used to.
I'll explain my Oklahoma Tennessee quirk real quick. I think, again, we talked about Tennessee earlier. My model, I think, is taking a big chunk of their returning production, their top 10 in returning snaps from last season. Obviously, the quarterback is a huge question mark around them. I think the defense is going to take a step up. I think Jim Knowles coming in and the good grouping of Penn State players he brought with him is going to not prolong the implementation of his defense as we saw with Penn State last year. I think they'll get way more up to speed quicker than the team did for Penn State last year. So I think their defense is going to improve, but I'm leaning Oklahoma as my 5th team because, again, Mateer back with Arbuckle, they improved at receiver. I mean, they're similar to Alabama in my mind. If they can improve the run game, even to be an average run team, they're going to be a 10 win football team in my eye. So I think Oklahoma will just get over the hump. They return a vast amount of defensive players from a very good unit last year, arguably the best unit in the country last year. So, and I always trust Venables to at least have a solid defense, not a great defense, but at least a above average defense. So I think that's why I'm going to lean Oklahoma to be my 5th team. But I think LSU personally, I don't know about you, Jake. I think LSU is one of those fringe teams. I'm projecting them in the playoff now, but I think a couple early games, like I know they have A&M and Ole Miss back to back at Ole Miss on the road and then A&M at home. Those 2 games could define their season because if they don't get out of the doors quick in those 2 games, and Clemson's going to be down in their opener, I forget who they play week 2, but those really aren't tune-up games for that, gauntlet they have right at the start of the season. So LSU is going to be fascinating early in the season to see how they get out of the gates.
In a game that I'm certainly very excited to see unfold right in front of our eyes is the being able to watch Lane Kiffin return back to Oxford.
Oh yeah,
and take on Ole Miss. That could be a little bit of a season definer as well. It could be either instant gratification for Lane Kiffin making the right decision, or for really the Ole Miss fan base sticking with staying internally, going with Pete Golding. That could be some gratification as well. And it's going to be absolutely just like how we know that he's going to be booed, right? Like there's no question about that.
Without a doubt.
The real question is, do we see things thrown on the field towards Lane Kiffin? That's really the $1 million question we should be asking ourselves.
I think so, because wasn't there an I'm trying to remember, wasn't there a game with Ole Miss that stuff got thrown? No, I'm thinking the Texas-Georgia game, sorry, a few years ago, when Texas fans were throwing stuff on the field. I remember that,
because they thought they had an interception, and then it initially was called pass interference, and then the Texas fan base essentially bullied their way into the refs picking the flag up.
Yeah, I remember. Yep. Yeah.
So I'm glad that we have a little bit of a difference here, man. Because I'm not gonna lie, I was getting a little concerned for a second, being on the same wavelength. I'm not personally as high on Texas A&M and Oklahoma. I think Texas A&M last year had the benefit of playing one of the easier schedules in the SEC, and this time around it does flip on his head. And just seeing them when they played against top level competition in their last couple of games, against Texas and of course against Miami. Texas A&M did flounder, and they just have more of those teams on their schedule this year, whether it be LSU on the road. They have Alabama on the road as well, at Oklahoma, which I know is a team that you also have in the playoff too, which is another big one. And I kind of feel the same way about Oklahoma as well. I'm hoping for a healthy John Mateer. What's really holding me back ultimately is I actually think they're going to get off on a little bit of a slow start. I actually think they start the year 2-3.
So Michigan, Georgia, Texas, all losses.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I think they could go 2-1 in that stretch. Personally, if they go 2-1 in that stretch, I think they'll be fine. But it's totally not out of the realm of possibility they start the season 2-3 without a doubt. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. That's a very tough opening 5 games for the Sooners.
Yeah. It does seem like we do have 2 spots left for our playoff teams, and I have a feeling that we know where one of them is going to be. I think we're both going to land here on Notre Dame, but I think it's an expectation for Notre Dame to make the playoff with not as bad as Texas Tech schedule, but it's not a good schedule either. Just in terms of strength of schedule, they need to at least split the BYU Miami game, which I think they can finish undefeated. I absolutely do believe that. But at the same time, 10-2, I don't think is going to be able to really cut it.
Without a doubt. I have them projected undefeated right now, but at BYU is never easy, and Miami at home is going to be cinema. So, and they'll have revenge on their mind from the season opener last season. I think it's not a matter of if Notre Dame makes the playoff, because I think pretty much everyone and their brother is projecting Notre Dame to make the playoff. It's a matter of how high of a seed do they get, because we know they automatically get a spot if they're in the top 12. It's just where do they get placed, and do they have a favorable road to a national championship based on that seeding?
Yeah, because I will say this about Notre Dame. I mean, I'm sure they were definitely going to have revenge on their mind because of what happened in Miami, and that ultimately ended up being the difference.
For sure.
It was basically down to either Miami or Notre Dame getting the final at-large bid into the college football playoff because of the quirks that we saw with the auto bid situation for that 10 seed. But with that being said, I'm with you as well, Reed. I had them going undefeated as well, but I don't have them getting a top 4 bye, because I do think they're going to get punished for the lack of a strength of schedule and the lack of signature wins outside of both the BYU game as well as the Miami game. I think their other 10 games are pretty deplorable, and I would be shocked if they dropped any of their other 10 games besides the BYU or Miami. Now, if they lose both those games, I mean, I have them as a favorite, but I can understand a little bit more. If they drop any of these other 10 games, disgusting.
I could see him realistically being a 5. I don't think they get a top 4 because they don't get the benefit of a conference. They don't get the benefit of a strength of schedule perspective. So I could see him being a 5 seed personally. I think you do give him the benefit of the doubt for going undefeated. Going undefeated is never easy. And I think beating a fellow playoff team in Miami also boosts their resume. So I think a 5 or 6, I think, is like as high as I see Notre Dame going.
Yeah, and I have Notre Dame as a 6 seed personally,
Yeah.
because I think there's some teams that are going to have more losses, but I think that they're either better teams on paper than Notre Dame, at least to start things out, or they have a better like strength of schedule. So that's my thinking on Notre Dame. Albeit, again, I think they're going to be an undefeated football team. I don't think that unless we see some additional chaos around the country, I don't think that top 4 is not that it's not realistic, but I don't think it should be an expectation, even if they do finish undefeated, unless it ends up being like a BYU that ends up winning the Big 12 and Miami win the ACC. Then we can certainly see Notre Dame getting boosted. BYU is a little bit of a wild card in all of this. Yeah,
for sure. Now, Jake, as you are G5 Jake, this is the $1 million question to me. Who is your G5 representative?
So first and foremost, I know that we've been calling it the G5 for years, but it needs to happen with me too. But we're really looking at the G6 with the Pac-12 officially coming back with mostly like former Group of 5 teams. We got to keep it real. Although I do think that the Pac-12 is head and shoulders above the rest of the smaller conferences in the FBS level. So I do have Boise State returning back to the college football playoff. There was a couple of other teams I was considering here. I was considering UNLV. I think UNLV could make a pretty compelling case here if they can run the table, which they do have a ceiling that exists where UNLV could win every single game. Ditto with James Madison as well. And James Madison, we literally saw them in the playoff as well. I think Sunbelt Billy's going to have a roster that's head and shoulders above everyone else in that conference for the time being. Yeah. But I think Boise State, I think UNLV and James Madison also finishing around that 11-1 type of record. I think not only does Boise State do that, but I think Boise State has one of the stronger strength of schedules in the G6. And so I think that is going to push Boise State into a college football playoff spot. And I will be locking them in as my 12 seed into the college football playoff.
I'm not disagreeing. I also project Boise State right now, but I think I kind of vary in the teams that are going to be in that consideration spot on that bubble. UNLV, I have in that conversation. I think New Mexico is going to be in that conversation personally. I know you vary differently from your view of the Lobos, but I think they just return enough. They're going to be competitive, and I am a huge Jason Eck fan, so I think he's going to have the Lobos competitive again. James Madison, I have in that conversation. USF, I personally think is up there. UTSA as well. I know you were high on UTSA in the American, so I think those two teams are also going to be in this conversation. But yeah, I think Boise State is the cream of the crop in the G6. Totally agree with that. And I think they are truly the team to beat. But again, for all the teams that we did talk about on that bubble with the G6, I think they don't stack up to Boise State, at least as of April 16th. So yeah, that's what we got.
Yeah, and you make some fascinating points about UTSA as well. I think UTSA could make some compelling arguments. They do need to find a way to win the Tulane game. That is a toss-up for me. And then the $1 million question is, and I think the committee is going to value this as well, against your power conference opponents, are you competitive? And that helped James Madison a little bit in terms of being able to get that final spot because of the fact that we saw the Duke conundrum and we saw them at least competitive with Louisville. They didn't win the game, but it was a one possession game deep into the fourth quarter. And it wasn't even one of those, James Madison scored to cut it to a 1-score game with 30 seconds left. It was legitimately a dogfight for 4 quarters. So UTSA has Texas, and we do have Texas as a college football playoff team. The two of us do. So if UTSA does make it competitive, then that could help the Roadrunners out tremendously. USF, on the other hand, I don't think they're going to have that benefit of the doubt because they just don't have those signature games that they did last year. They're non-conference. They have FIU. Delaware State, shout out to Deshaun Jackson, Bowling Green on the road, and then you have Kent State at home. That's the non-conference. So, USF is going to have to run the table to have a chance. And even then, Boise State has a harder schedule. Maybe looking at, UNLV, like we talked about, they have tougher games. New Mexico, you talked about them have a tougher game as well. I have a harder time seeing USF getting in, but I mean, it's certainly not impossible at the same time.
Yeah, definitely Boise State's out of conference schedule helps them. Oregon, obviously, we both project them as a playoff team. Memphis is going to be a fascinating matchup in the group of 6 between Memphis and Boise State. And then South Dakota, I mean, is a competitive FCS team. So they definitely get the benefit of the doubt of having a competitive out-of-conference schedule on top of the Pac-12 schedule that they have. In Western Michigan, how could I forget that? Jeez, they go to Kalamazoo week 4. How could I forget that?
Yeah, cross-country road trip, and it's going to give us a real opportunity to see what the Broncos are made of, because I know that you're really high on Western Michigan as well. When we were doing our MAC preview as a collective crew earlier in the springtime. So that'll be a fascinating watch as well, just in terms of what we see from this Oregon football team, or not Oregon, but Boise State and Western Michigan, collectively. This is what I get for doing 2 things at once, right?
No, I know what you meant.
But you're ready to see the bracket that I'm going to definitely hold myself over for the next 3 months, at least for me.
Okay.
So here we go. Read them and weep. We have the official College Football Red Zone spring bracket.
Whoa. Hold on. Battle of Indiana in the championship? Whoa.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah, we're going to get a rematch from a couple of years ago. So I'm going to explain myself a little bit, explain this bracket, because I didn't get a chance to get yours. So one game that I'm really interested in the first round is Miami and Georgia. Candidly, if this was happening on a neutral site field instead of being on campus, I would give Georgia the benefit of the doubt and beat Miami on a neutral site field. But because this game is going to happen in Miami, I do think what we're going to end up seeing is I think Miami is going to barely survive against Georgia. And I think Miami is going to move on and make a pretty deep run. I think they are also going to be able to beat Texas and get to the semifinal before falling to Notre Dame. Oregon, I'm not going to explain that one. I think Oregon is going to be too much for Boise State. Ole Miss, I think they'll be the one team on the road where I could see them beating Alabama. I think Trinidad Chandler is good enough, even though I think Alabama is a slightly better overall team. I think old Trinidad Chandler is one of those guys where he himself, and we saw this last year in the Georgia game, he could win a game for you. So I do have Ole Miss going on. Notre Dame, I think Notre Dame is a better team, even collective team, even though LSU has really talented pieces. I think 2027 is the year where we're looking at LSU as a more serious threat. We do see them get back, but I do think that Notre Dame handles them there. And then all that being said, because Texas Tech, I have them going undefeated and having that conference championship benefit, and all these other teams in the P4, I think they're going to have multiple losses, whether it's from the conference championship game or from the regular season. I do have Texas Tech as the 1 seed because they're really the last undefeated team from the power conferences outside of Notre Dame, and Notre Dame doesn't have a power conference. So that's what I'm looking at. I do ultimately have Notre Dame beating Indiana in the national championship, a rematch from 2 years ago in the first round. And the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, I think, are going to be your national champion. The first one for Marcus Freeman.
I'm not putting it past you. I think they're definitely in the running this coming season. I think them, Ohio State, and Texas are probably they are the 3 favorites. So, they arguably have the best roster in college football. I know you view Ohio State to have that, but I think a lot of people have Notre Dame in that conversation. So I don't have an actual bracket like you do. I just have my teams listed. So I'll go how I have them listed. So my 5-12, actually, I'll just say my top 4 first. My top 4 would be Texas 1, Ohio State 2, Oregon, and Georgia. So Texas wins the SEC 1 seed. Ohio State 2, Big Ten champion. Oregon, Big Ten runner-up. They're the 3. Georgia, SEC runner-up. They're the 4. Notre Dame at 5. Texas Tech at 6. Indiana 7. Miami 8. A&M 9. Oklahoma 10. LSU 11. And Boise State 12. So my 5-12 would be Notre Dame, or would be Boise State going on the road to Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame handles them. LSU on the road at Texas Tech. Fascinating at Jones AT&T Stadium. I'm going to take Texas Tech in that matchup. Indiana against Oklahoma. Oklahoma going on the road to Bloomington, Indiana.
Oh yeah, that's a scary spot for these SEC teams for sure.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I'm going to take Oklahoma in that upset.
Oh,
I'm going to take Oklahoma in the upset.
You're really feeling Oklahoma then, huh?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
And then A&M going on the road to Miami. I'll take Miami over the Aggies. So I'm trying to do a visual in my head. So Texas Tech, the 1, I'm basing this off of yours. So Texas Tech, the 1 would play Miami. I will take Texas. My 4, Georgia, would play Notre Dame. I will take Notre Dame. 2 is Ohio State. They play, what was this? The 7-10, Indiana, Oklahoma. So Ohio State against Oklahoma. I'll take Ohio State. And then my 3, Oregon, they will play the winner of Texas Tech and who's this? Wait, no.
Who dat?
This is so hard to do without a visual. I'm just gonna say I also have Notre Dame as my champion, but I would have them playing. I would have them playing Ohio State. I think I don't know. This is hard to do without a visual, but Notre Dame is my champion as well.
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, I mean, we have the same wavelength when it comes to. I'm assuming you're going off of Texas is going to beat Ohio State in the regular season. That's what you're rolling off of. Hence why you have Texas ranked ahead of like Ohio State for example. But yeah, man, I think Texas Tech does with that playoff experience. I think that does help them out, and I actually think they do win a game before they do end up losing to Indiana. Although candidly, I think my top 3 like teams I'm really looking at for a national championship because I think they have all the ingredients to make a run. Like Notre Dame, who's obviously my champ, Indiana, who's going to be in my championship game, and Texas Tech. Texas Tech, I think, also has all the ingredients as well when it comes to having a really good defense, a really good offensive pieces, an experienced quarterback, an experienced coach. And this one isn't talked about as much, which is why part of the reason why I didn't have LSU making it out of the first round. Normally, a team that wins national championship does win at least 10 games the previous year. LSU did not do that. So I do have LSU at least making the playoff, but I'm not, even with the talent that they have, I'm not taking them seriously as a national championship contender because we normally don't see teams make a jump from having a mediocre record the previous year to winning the national championship in one fall swoop.
Yeah, that is a feat to overcome. So I don't disagree.
But yeah, so I do also have Notre Dame and Ohio State playing like in my playoff as well, except that is happening in the quarterfinal. It's not even a thing like Ohio State, I think, has a really good team. I just think that Notre Dame has more experience with playing with each other.
Yeah.
And I think that comes into a play, particularly in a neutral site environment. And that Notre Dame team is going to be extra motivated after feeling like they were snubbed, so much so that they ended up basically taking their ball and going home.
Yeah. I'm actually typing out the bracket as we speak so I can give you my. Okay, here we go. 1 seed Texas would play the 8 Miami. Texas wins. Notre Dame, the 5, plays the 4 Georgia. I have Notre Dame beating Georgia. Ohio State, the 2, plays Texas Tech, the 6. I have Ohio State winning. Oregon beats the 10 seeded Oklahoma. So Texas, Notre Dame in the semi. I have Notre Dame, excuse me. Ohio State, Oregon in a rematch of the Big Ten championship. I have Ohio State, and yeah, Notre Dame beating Ohio State in the championship.
Okay. So I mean, we're thinking the same thing in terms of Notre Dame. I'm curious to hear from the audience though, what you guys think in terms of who you have winning it all. Are you on the same wavelength as Reed and I, going to Notre Dame in terms of winning the national championship, or do you have somebody else? And definitely let us know why in the comments section. One more thing that I did want to mention before we sign off tonight is that I wanted to let you guys know about what's happening next Thursday. So I did get on the phone with Roger Goodell to ask to see if they can move the NFL draft, or at least get it done by the time that 8 o'clock rolls around so that we can have our show. So what Roger Goodell did while he was on the phone, he took a look at the follower account of NFL on social media. He took one look at my my social media account between Twitter, YouTube, and all that. He laughed. He gave a good chuckle and said that we'll be in touch. So that's to say that we might have something for Thursday, but if not, we're not going to have a show on Thursday. We're just going to have a show Monday night, and that would be the only live show that we have on Monday night. So that we all have an opportunity to celebrate the best college players from last college football season.
Yes.
And see their childhood dreams come true, becoming members of the NFL. So
for sure.
So that's what we'll have in store for next week. Just one live show. But with that being said, man, like any final thoughts before we sign off tonight, my guy?
If anyone is seeing this and is in Pittsburgh for the draft, I will be at least on Thursday night. I'll be at the draft. So if anyone is around, DM me. Social is right there. Just hit me up on Twitter, and would love to meet you guys for sure.
Yeah, and you heard it first. We are going to have boots on the ground. So I mean, it's
yes.
Make sure you look for him. He's not going to be that hard to miss. So
just for this big forehead, trust me,
big ass forehead. So, hey, we're gonna sign off, but really appreciate you guys sitting out and enjoying the show here tonight. If you enjoyed the live show as well, make sure you go ahead, do a couple of things for me, hit that like button, and then hit that subscribe button as well. If you do happen to be brand new to the channel, this is Jake from College Football Redzone signing off alongside my co-host Reed Napper. And with that being said, hopefully you guys are all out there having a